So before we begin, I had a couple of questions for you about Ruth and Shavuos. What foods are we traditionally eating around this time for Shavuot? What is the traditional stuff? Charlene, are you involved? Are you a big deal in your synagogue president or something in the sisterhood?
I'm involved, yes.
All right. So what kind of food would they put out for Kiddush on Shavuot?
I believe it's dairy type.
Dairy. Okay. Diane?
Oh, I was gonna say dairy,
Dairy.
but for
Cheesecake.
some reason blintzes come to mind.
Blintzes. I once did a whole a workshop on why we eat blintzes. And one of the things is when you have the two blintzes side by side, it looks like the scrolls of the Torah. Funny thing. Why dairy? Why not meat? So in the Torah, when it's about when Moses goes up and there's thunder and there's lightning and it's a whole big show there, it's like being at Jones Beach. And the men are not supposed to go near their wives, stay celibate for 3 days, and everyone is supposed to wash their clothes. And, everyone's supposed to be pure inwardly and outwardly because they're going to receive the 10 Commandments. And it's a very big moment. Women, men, children cannot touch the base of the mountain. They have to stay a little bit of a distance because if they do, they die. So there's all kinds of rules for them receiving the 10 Commandments. And they were not supposed to be shachating. They were not supposed to be killing animals because here they're receiving all how we're supposed to act humanely and all the rest, the rules for animals. So they just use dairy food. And so cheesecake and blintzes. I make potato blintzes, blueberry blintzes, and cheese blintzes. And I am inviting my knitting group friends over on Monday. Not on Thursday. On Thursday, I will be at services. And so that's why we're not meeting on Friday, because the holidays start Thursday night. And I usually teach a class in the library Thursday night. I'm not going to. I told them why. So we won't have our class on Friday because I will be at services. Actually, next week, I have a reading the first day and the second day. I've been loaded up on, and I have the president of our synagogue's daughter is having her bat mitzvah this Shabbat. So I have a 13-line Torah reading that I've been working on for Shabbat. So they loaded me up. So I've got readings Saturday and next Friday and Saturday. So they didn't want me to be idle. So they did. Okay. What is some of the most important things about Ruth? Why is she so important? That we read the book of Ruth actually on during Shavuot. So I guess I don't know if they read it on Friday, which would be the first day. Maybe they'll read it on Friday. But the book of Ruth only has 4 chapters. I gave you chapter 1, and then I sent you the end. So 2 and 3 are not as significant, but the end is really important because that's where a lot of the important stuff happens. But what is so important about Ruth? Historically, Francine?
Well, I was going to say she chooses to be Jewish.
Right.
You know,
So she is like the convert par excellence.
Right.
There was her mother-in-law, Naomi, tries to dissuade her, but her sister, Orpah, goes back to Moab, but Ruth continues to cleave to Ruth, her mother-in-law, and they go on together to back to Israel, back to Bethlehem. Let me see. So what do you call marriage, a special kind of marriage, if a man dies and leaves his wife a widow and they have no children, and she is supposed to, the brother of the deceased is supposed to step up to marry the widow and give her children so that the line will continue, his line, the husband. What do you call that? There's a name for that. It begins with an L. Do you know that, Diane? I can't hear you.
Yes, you told us last week it wasn't a
Right.
meeting.
Yes.
Right.
what's it called?
Leviarte?
Lever,
Leverett.
Levirate, levirate
Oh.
marriage. So that's when
The
the
letters backwards.
brother of the deceased steps up to marry the widow, his brother's widow. And that is so that his inheritance will continue and the line will continue, a biological line. Okay, the DNA, it's the same family. Okay, why do we read the book of Ruth on Shavuot? And you know what Shavuot means?
Weeks.
Weeks. Shavua, when you say at the end of Shabbat, you say Shavua Tov, and you sing that at Saturday night at Havdalah. So Shavua, and the plural is Shavuot, weeks. It's the holiday of weeks. And it's 7 weeks, Sheva, Shavuot after Passover. So we start counting the Omer on the second night of Passover. But why would we read this book now? What is there any connection to anything that we read the book of Ruth at this season? So remember that Israel was an agricultural nation. And this was the season of the barley harvest. And in the book of Ruth, it takes place when she goes back to Israel. She is gleaning in the fields barley. So that's the time. It's the time of the barley harvest. And another thing, so there is a love story here. So with Ruth and Boaz, and I'll get to something funny later about Boaz, but apparently he is a bachelor because it never mentions that he's married. He seems to be single when he offers to marry Ruth in chapter 4. So it's a barley season, the barley harvest. And the two things that are important to know is the two terms peah and leket. Peah, like from peot, the corners. The Israelites left the corners of the field unharvested, so that, and now the act of going so that the widow, the poor, the orphan, and the stranger would be able to come into a field and they would be able to take the corners, whatever was growing in the corners, grapes or whatever crop it was, barley, grapes, whatever. And that was sort of like their social system, social welfare system. So it was very interesting that even back then, there was a concern for people who were less fortunate, for a widow who didn't have her husband to go in and bring the crops in, an orphan who had no parents. It's a very sensitive arrangement. You know, there's the concern, the compassion for the less fortunate. So the love story will evolve between, and some funny things that happen between, so who's the main character? Who is the daughter-in-law of Ruth? Oh, well, I just said it, Ruth. Naomi is the mother-in-law. The
Right.
daughter-in-law is Ruth. And the one who went back to Moab was Orpah. So there were two sisters, Orpah and Ruth, and they were Moabite women. And Naomi is Jewish. And of course, the 3 times she tries to dissuade Ruth from following her. And what's the famous line?
Where thou go, I will surely follow.
Yeah, whither thou goest, I will go. Your people will be my people,
Oh,
and
right.
God, and your God, my God. And so this puts Ruth in a category all by herself. So she leaves home, she follows her mother-in-law, and she goes back with her to Israel, where Naomi has some land. She has an inheritance from her husband, Elimelech. Okay. Also about the love story is that we know that even from the Friday night Lecha Dodi, that the connection between Israel and God is like what?
A bridegroom and a
A
bride.
bride and a bridegroom, a bride and a groom. So the Jews, there's a lot of poetry, the Psalms, that Israel is the bride of God. And when they misbehave and do things that Hashem doesn't like, he always goes back and says, you were the bride of my youth, our early relationship, but now you've done this and this, and I'm very angry. But it's always, I will forgive you because you were the bride of my youth. And so there's going back to the loving relationship. And that happens a lot. We are erring, we go in the wrong path, idol worship or whatever. But yet we were the bride, and so that's like first love. So that's in Lachadodi. Okay. So let's get on with the beginning. So I have my book. This is the book that I am using. This has all the Megillot. So the Megillah is not just referred to Purim, but the scrolls that the stories were written on. Okay, so that's the Megillah. Like Purim, it's like a letter. It's folded back and forth like a letter, the Megillah, if you look at it. And also there's some that are just a scroll that opens up like the Torah. And they put it in a canister. They roll it up and they put it in a canister. And some of those are nicely decorated. Okay, so to get started, some words here. So I'm going to read some and then go over some of the words. So the very beginning, chapter 1 on the page that I gave you, and it has Roman number 1. It says, Vayehi b'yamei shifot hashoftim. Who were the shoftim? This is in the historical period of the shoftim. Shoftim, a shofet, were the judges. So it says, b'yamei, in the days of shifot, judged, hashoftim. Vayehi ra'av. Ra'av is famine. When you say in modern Hebrew, I'm hungry, you say, ani ra'ev. A woman says, ani ra'eva, I'm hungry, let's eat. Be'eretz vayelech ish mi Beit Lechem. And so there was a man from Bethlehem, the house of bread, Beit Lechem, from the tribe of Judah. Lagor b'stei Moab, he went to live in the fields of Moab. Who, that means He, the pronoun he, referring to a man, V'ishto, and his wife, Ushnei banav, and his 2 sons. And these were tragic figures in this story. So this man's name, Va'ish Elimelech, Ha'ish Elimelech, V'shem Ishto Naomi. So he was Elimelech, and that was the husband who soon dies of Naomi. V'shem Shnei Banav, Machlon v'Chilion. So Machlon was Ruth's husband, and Chilion was Orpah's husband, and they died. Okay. And then, so that's verse 1 and 2, sets the story where it takes place. It takes place in Moab, which is outside of Israel. I read one commentary, and that said that the reason they died, that Elimelech and the 2 sons died, was because even in a famine, he should have stayed in Israel. He should not move out of Haaretz, which he did. He went to a Christian country. Well, it wasn't Christian, but it was a non-Jewish country. It was probably, they probably worshipped idols. Okay, so that is the place where it takes place, when it takes place, the barley harvest. And we are now in Moab. All right, and after 10 years, the 2 sons and the husband dies, and that leaves Naomi as a widow. And at one point she says, I'm too old to have children, more sons for you to marry Orpah and Ruth. I cannot, even if I knew a man, I would not be able to get pregnant at my age. All right, so that was chapter 1 and chapter 2, the famine and the move. Now, in verse 4 and 5, Vayisu lahem nashim. Nashim are women. They took women. Moaviot, this was the sons when they were alive. Shem ha'achat Orpah. The name of one was Orpah, V'Shem Hashenit, Ruth. Vayeshvu Sham Ke'eser Shanim, and they lived in Moab for 10 years. So they were there for a while before they died. But Ruth didn't have any, there were no children involved. So Naomi didn't have any grandchildren. Okay. Okay. And then let's see, that's 4 and 5, verse 5. Okay. Okay. And then yeah, verse 16. Let's see. Verse 16. Okay. Verse 16. Verse 16 is on the second page that I gave you. All right. So I want somebody to read that. Verse 16 starts with Vatomer Ruth. And this is the very, I want you to read this, the very famous quote. So if you look at the second page, I said, sent on top, it has Roman number 2. And if you look at the side column, you'll find verse 16. Somebody want to read this? This is a very famous, and I think you probably can translate the whole thing and know all the words.
I can
You
do.
want to give it a shot? Okay.
Wait, can you explain better where we are?
Okay.
I'm on page, I see where it says 2 at the top, and then it's 1.
Okay. So look, there's a number 6. That was the 6th section that I sent, number 6. And go down on the right, it says 15.
Oh, 6, got it, 6, got it.
Okay.
Okay.
So where it says 16, that would be verse 16.
Got it,
And
thank
then
you,
it starts in the middle with Vatomer Ruth.
got it.
Okay, okay, said it good. Okay, Diane.
Vatomer Root El Tifgi.
Ow.
Say that again.
In that.
Oh,
ow.
Al Tifgi. I gotcha. Al Tifgi Gi B V no B no that's V. Sorry. V V Laots Ve Lashuv Me'acha
As vech.
Le Azvech Lashuv Be'ach Rich Be'ach
Raich.
Reich. Okay. Me'acha Reich Ki El Asher Teliki Elech.
So that's the first part, and it says, so, ki el, to where you will go. That's exactly what it says. Ki el asher telchi, and it's all in the feminine. Elech, I will go. That's the first part.
I will go. Uva Asher Talinai. No, Talini.
Mhm.
Sorry, it's hard to tell. That was a dot. Aline.
Okay, and where you lodge, where you live, lodge where you stay, I will stay where you live, I will live, is what it means. Okay.
Amech. Ami.
What is that part? Anybody know what means? Amech, Ami. Am Yisrael Chai.
Right.
Is people.
So okay. Amech, and she's speaking to a woman, so it's feminine. Your
People.
people, Ami.
Are my people.
Your people will be my people. Okay, which means Israelites, Jews. Okay, so where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, where you live, I will live. Your people will be my people. Keep going.
Is that, it's hard to tell. Is that Va? Val Hey
I'm sorry, it's they. Velohayich.
Velohai. It didn't sound right at all. Elohai.
Okay, and so that comes from Elohim. So, and your God will be my God. Okay, So she is really, she's making some promises here. And she
Mhm.
keeps these promises because she continues going. She does not leave her mother-in-law. She stays by her side. Okay, and then she says, Ba'asher tamuti, and where you die, amut. So I'm not going to go back home to my country. And where you die, I will die. Visham akaver ko, and there I will be buried. So she is very firm. She's not saying I'll go and I'll spend 2 weeks there. I am going, I'm putting roots in Israel. That's it. Okay, so this is very strong stuff. Now, if you go on the side and look at put the paper on the side. I have a little thing that I put on the side. In verse 22, this talks about the barley harvest. So when we talk about the Shiva Minim, the 7 kinds on Tu B'Shvat, we talk about 7 kinds of things that grow in Israel. There's dates and pomegranates and grapes and figs and barley, wheat, chita, and barley, seorah. Seorah is barley. So this is the barley harvest. So in English, it says they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of the barley harvest. Vehema ba'u Beit Lechem b'tchilat, in the beginning of Ketzir, the cutting of seorim, the cutting of the barley. So there it gives a kind of a season when the story takes place. And so that is a connection with another connection why they read this book at this time, because spring harvest, it's a barley harvest. Okay, now. Oh, so I gave you, I didn't give you chapter 3, but I'm going to just gloss it with you quickly. So chapter 3, they go to Naomi's home, and Naomi, at that time, your life was being married. So she urges Ruth to go down to the fields at night. And first she says, get washed, and she put on your makeup, your ointments, whatever you put on a nice holiday dress, and go and see Boaz in the field at night. She should go at night to visit Boaz, to see him, to face to face with him. Okay, and then she says, and lie down in the field. She's very specific. Lie down in the field next to him. Okay, now I want to read this to you in English. She's very Naomi is. She's not house hunting, she's husband hunting for, she says, and this is kinsman, by the way, he is a relative. She says, wash thyself, therefore, and anoint thee, and put thy raiment, clothing upon thee, and get thee down to the threshing floor, but make not thyself known unto the man until he shall have done eating and drinking. So, let him, when he, and it shall be when he lieth down, and thou shalt mark the place where he lieth down, thou shalt go in and uncover his feet and lay thee down. Lay down next to him. And then it says, and he will tell thee what thou shalt do. Okay. So after he's eating and he's drinking, he's in a good mood and he's merry. And then she goes and looks at her, and then he says, and he said, who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth, thy handmaid. Now, spread therefore thy skirt over thy handmaid, for thou art a kinsman. So if you have a book and you look at the notes, it's interesting because the spread over me the cloth, it says literally, it's the word for wing. Where is this cloth? Kenafecha. Your wing, and it says it's a metaphor borrowed from birds who shield their mates with their wings during mating. So we know what mama-in-law has in mind. She gets her all, looks nice. She goes down to the field, nobody's there, it's at night, she's all done up, and she's lie down and take the cloth. Now apparently that custom of putting the cloth on is almost, it's sort of a marriage ceremony. And you know that in Israel, they use a talit, and Israelis get married under the tallis. And we, in America, we have a canopy, right? And so when you got married, you were under a canopy. And so that's kind of like a mating ritual. So everything is all said here. Now, I think the jury is out on whether anything happened, but she is there, and she shows him who she is and that they are relatives, and she's a widow, and he's not married, and you know, there's the go ahead. But it doesn't say anything more. Doesn't say anything. And then he says, "Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, and thou hast shown more kindness in the end than in the beginning." And she says, "You did not follow the young men, whether poor or rich, and now fear not, I will do to thee all that thou sayest, for all the men in the gate of my people do know that thou art a virtuous woman." So I suppose she keeps her virtue, that nothing happens, but she just, you know, she makes herself known. Okay, and that's what her mother-in-law wanted. Her mother-in-law wanted Boaz to take note of her, that she was not just another gleaner in the field, but he was special. They are related. She's a widow. Look, she's young and attractive and marriageable and all the rest. Okay, and then he puts some of the barley into her cape, and maybe he ties it up like a backpack. So when she leaves the field, nobody will think that she's a woman. He wants her to go out unrecognized. That just looks like somebody, any part came to glean in the field, and she's got the barley, and it says she must have had superhuman strength because it was heavy, all the barley that he put in her cape. Okay, these are some of the little innuendos and things. Okay, so he doesn't want any talk. But spread thy skirt over thy handmaid. Now that's okay. So now let's go to chapter 4. This is what you have. So in chapter 4, things happen. A lot of things happen. Chapter 4. Okay, so 3 is still, she's going, and she's getting a good reputation that she's taking care of her mother-in-law, and she's gleaning. And by the way, he had said to the reapers, he said, "And it's okay if you leave a little extra when you see her coming. Don't cut where she is. Leave a little extra for her. Drop a little extra, because the peah is the corners of the field. The leket is the gleanings, is the droppings. Whatever they drop, they don't pick up. So if they're cutting and they gather that and they put it in a wagon or whatever, but this extra that falls, that's also for the poor, the widow, and the orphan." And he gives instructions to the men. When you see her, when you see this woman, Ruth, cut and leave a little extra for her. She's a relative. Okay, we get to chapter 4. There's a lot of interesting things. So in chapter 4, takes place at the gate. So the men used to convene at the gate. So for any kind of transactions to take place, you need a minyan. And how many are in a minyan?
10.
Okay. So if you look at the top of the page, so in chapter 4, so here's how verse 1 starts. You don't have verse 1. I just read 1 page. You go to chapter 4, and it says, "Now Boaz went up to the gate and sat him down there. Boaz Allah," that means he went up like an aliyah. Hasha'ar, Sha'ar is a gate. So he went up to the gate of the city, Vayeshev Sham, and he sat there. V'hinei, and behold, Hagoel Over, and the near kinsman, they don't really name him, but they think his name is Tov. So a near kinsman comes by. Over means passes by. Asher Diber Boaz, whom Boaz mentioned. Vayomer Surah, Shva Po, sit down. And he said, sit down. And he calls him Ploni Almoni. Dorothy, are you there? Well, that's like so-and-so. When you don't have a name for somebody, like in Spanish, they say fulano. It's just like, okay, so-and-so. We would say so-and-so is there. and they call him Ploni Almoni. I remember when I was taking modern Hebrew class, that's like so-and-so is there, but they don't name him. Okay, and they told him to sit down there. Ho such a one, turn aside, sit down here, and he turned aside and sat down. That person is the one who's the closer relative to Naomi and by marriage Ruth. So he really should be the one stepping up to say he would marry Ruth. But we'll see what happens. Okay, so we have a minyan because we have 10 men and the elders, they call them the old ones, Hazakenim, sitting by the gate. I guess they're just chewing the fat. And that's where, that's where they gather to talk to one another. All right. So now, verse 4, which I think I gave you. Yeah. So let's look at verse 4. So verse 4 is on that third page I gave you, and it says, so what Boaz is going to do now, he's going to tell everybody by the gate, all the elders, that he is one of the closest relatives, but there is one closer than he is, and that this is about the levirate marriage, and that's the one that should step up. But since Ruth is a Moabite girl, she's a non-Israelite, he's making this known who she is and that she's related. He's not trying to go behind anybody's, he's not trying to do this in secret. He wants everyone to know that she's the Moabite and he's one of the close relatives. Okay, so this is not done in secret. He's just broadcasting the whole thing. Okay. Nancy, you want to read a little bit? So if you see verse 4, there's a big 4 on the right-hand side. And he is,
Ve'ani, starting with that.
okay, yeah,
Is that what you mean?
yeah.
Ve'ani, Riti,
Amarti,
Amarti. Is it a gimel? I can't.
yeah, Eglah,
Egleh. Zenach.
Aznacha,
Aznacha, right. Lemor. Kanech.
Now, Kane means buy. So if you buy the property that Naomi has, she has a field. If you buy that, you get a freebie. You are going to also get Ruth.
Ruth.
You get the property and you will get Ruth. Kane, buy.
Neged. Is that right? Neged.
Neged.
Ha Yoshvim.
Hayeshovim. He says, buy it. Okay. He says, buy the property before them that sit here. That would make it a real, like a bill of sale, because you have to have the 10 people. They're witnesses. So he's talking to this closer relative, and he says, say that you will buy the field and you'll get the hand of Ruth also. V'neged zikne ami im tigal. So Gaal, that root, Gimel Aleph Lamed, is redeem. And all over Jewish theology, they talk about redemption. We were slaves, we were redeemed, and God redeemed us. So Gimel Aleph Lamed, you'll see that a lot in a lot of prayers. And he says, if you will redeem this, if Tigal, Gaal, if you really will redeem, will you buy the field? Good. Ve'im lo, if not, Yigal hagida li ve'eda ki ein zulatcha ligol. Okay, so redeem it if you will, but if not, the property will not be redeemed. Tell me, he said, and I will do the job. Anochi acharecha, I am after you. Acharei means after. So he's saying, I'm next in line. So either you redeem this field or I'm next. The anochi, and that's the same as ani. Acharecha, I'm after you. Vayomer anochi egal, and I will redeem the field, and I will also take Ruth in marriage. Okay, he says, I'm next. I'm after thee, and he said, I will redeem it. And then Boaz said, what day thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi, hast thou also bought of Ruth the Moabitess, and he's very clear who she is, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. So he's taking his claim. Okay, I will, and he has already met her in chapter 3. He met her. He knows she's young, she's pretty, she's marriageable. He's not married. He never says he's married. He has no children. He has no inheritors. So he is available. He's much older. And then is something that comes up. He says, so I'll marry her. And then it goes on. And the near kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar mine own inheritance. So this fellow, we'll call him Tov, that's what they called him. He says, I'm not interested. You know, I have a wife, I have children, they're going to inherit what I have. And this is going to, if I have her and I have kids, then some of that inheritance of mine will be shared with the child that I have with her. So I'm not interested. He says, take thou my right of redemption on thee, for I cannot redeem it. I am not interested. Okay, so now Boaz has a clear path. Now, here is a weird custom. So it says then, okay, I want someone to read where the 8 is, verse 8. So the near kinsman. Somebody want to read? Francine, you want to read?
It's so small, it's difficult.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it is small. Okay, vayomer,
Yomer. Hanael.
yes. Va, wait. Vayamer Hanoel, his sandal, not alayim are sandals. Okay. Liboaz,
Boaz.
okay.
Kene. Lech.
Lach,
Lach. By Yishloach.
Vaishlof, good.
Yishloach. Naalo.
Okay, so what's happening here is we're going to have an official transfer of property and a transfer. You can see that women, you bought and sold a wife, right? So you take off your sandal. So the transfer of property is going to go like that. So the one who has the property, so the one who has the right to the property, which is Tov, that's the nearest kinsman, takes off his sandal and he hands the sandal over to Boaz. This is the official transfer of property, and it's taking place at the gate where there's a minyan. There's the 10 old men, Zakanim. And that's the way it is done. I told you I went once to the rabbi's office right before Passover, and I was kidding around. I took my shoe off and I handed it to him and I said, okay, so now your secretary is now in charge of my property, my cat, my dog, and all my non-Passover food. And I took off my shoe and I handed it to him. And he laughed. I was just hoping it wasn't smelly. Okay, so now this is a transfer of property. This is it. She's being transferred around here. So now Boaz has the right to buy the field from Naomi and marry, and he has the rights now to marry Ruth. Okay, and so this step is the levirate marriage. This is the condition. He now is clear. It's a green light. He can go ahead. And he said, yeah, witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's, the dead husband of Naomi. I'll buy his field. from Naomi, and I will take Ruth off her hands. Okay, so this is the redemption thing. Now, okay, so the kinsman has given Boaz a sandal, the transfer of property is done. There's a little footnote that says in history, this was done by Indians, Germans, and Arabs. I don't know what they have in common, but this was done in modern times. Okay, now, the next page, and I am going to tell you about this on a footnote, which is interesting, page 137. Okay, so now I said that Boaz was much older than Ruth, right? And his job is to have a child. All right, so in Christianity, we have the Immaculate Conception. Well, we also have something here. We have something going on. All right, let me see, verse 13. All right, so it said that she conceived, it says, so Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife and he went in unto her and the Lord gave her conception. The footnote in my book says, the peculiar construction of the text leads a midrash to explain that a miracle occurred, whereby a new womb was given her. It was surely divine intervention that enabled her, Ruth, to have children by the elderly Boaz and not by the young Machlon, her husband who had died. So there's a little divine intervention here that this elderly gentleman is going to have a baby with the young Ruth. Okay, we love our midrashim. Okay, now, what happens is the line of King David. So the end of the fourth chapter, there's only 4 chapters. The end of the book of Ruth says there is a son. So there's a son born to Naomi, and they called his name Obed. Now I have a landscaper that comes. He's Mexican, and his name is Obet, O-B-E-T. And I think his mother didn't spell his name correctly, just like Orpah and Oprah, because this is Obed. Now, Eved, we sing in Passover, Avadim hayinu, hayinu, Pharaoh b'Mitzrayim, right? We were slaves, and Eved is a slave. Avadim are slaves. So we sing we were slaves to Pharaoh. So they called him Obed, which means he is like a servant of God, because Ruth was such a pious person and she was such a wonderful convert. Now her son Obed is one who also will be obedient to God. He will be a servant of God and man. Okay, so their child is Obed. And when he grows up, he has a child, and that child is Jesse. And Jesse is the father of David. So Ruth, the wonderful convert, the model convert, turns out to be the great-grandmother of King David. And she is the convert par excellence. So there's then they go through the whole generations. But the main, and they end again, and Boaz begot Obed, and Obed begot Jesse, and Jesse begot David. And this is thus the descent of the great King David and poet in Israel is traced to Moabite ancestry. Okay. Okay. Tradition ascribes Ruth unusual longevity. She did not die, says a Midrashic comment, until after beholding her royal descendant, Solomon, sitting and judging the case of the whole. Well, anyway, that's it. So the book of Ruth is very significant for this holiday. And so it's the barley harvest, it's the convert. And I don't know about your synagogue, but in our synagogue, we don't have Denise here, but I know Denise is going to read for the first time the Torah when she goes to convention. In our synagogue, our rabbi was training a group of women. And next week, not tomorrow, but the week after on the 27th, they're going to have a whole bat mitzvah ceremony. So the women who are not bat mitzvah now, I think there's 4 or 5 of them, they will each read a few lines of Torah. And I'll be reading that day too. And that's when they have, it's like their official bat mitzvahs. Does that happen in any of your shuls?
Used to.
Yeah, so it happens on Shavuot because this is the time we talk about Ruth, and it's a very nice time, the giving of the Torah. They're supposed to decorate, and they do in our shul, put flowers. They put up the chuppah on Shavuot, and they decorate it with flowers, either fake flowers or real flowers, and put flowers on the bima. Get it from the local florist, whatever. They probably get donations. And so it was very nice. Last year, I wanted to do something a little bit fun. So I asked the rabbi, could I ask the cantor to start singing some Jewish wedding music? It's like da 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 da. And I said, and I will make sure that there is a group of about 5 or 6 men and women who on that, and I will go up at that point when the cantor starts to sing, and I will make a little introduction and saying, so here we are, we've come from a long distance, and here we are at Yerushalayim. We've brought our sacrifices, we've brought our first fruits, and I explain what we brought. And I hear music, and I hear celebrating, I hear dancing. So he's singing, and it's sort of like our own version. What do you call that when they just do it instantaneously? What do you call that?
Improv.
No, it's like when
Flash
people
dance.
flash.
Oh,
So he's singing, and all of a sudden, from the congregation, a bunch of people just go up under the chuppah, and we start going around. And I had to stop when some of us got winded. They say to me, enough, we can't breathe. So we did that. I said, I just wanted to liven it up because it's late, and people will fall asleep. This was Erev Shavuot. This was at night. And so we're dancing around, and the cantor keeps singing. And it just brought a little bit of fun. A lot of times in the past, the cantor, he came to me a few years ago and he said, Carol, can you come up with a dessert, okay, that people can make on Erev Shavuot as a little workshop, but they cannot cook. You can't use blenders, you can't use the oven. But I'm supposed to come up with a dessert that people can put together. I said, oh, you're giving me a tall order here. So I looked, and finally I found something online that was in a nice a clear plastic cup. And you put, I think you put farmer cheese, and then you put strawberries. And I had a rolling pin, and they crushed cookies, chocolate cookies, and I had to find cookies that were parov. So they put a layer of the cheese, they put a layer of strawberries, they put chocolate sandwich cookies in, and then, and this was a fun thing, I couldn't use a beater. I wanted to put some whipped cream. So I got whipping cream, and I found in the kitchen a hand beater. So this was it. They were at different tables. I went around to different tables, and I tried this out first, that if you use a hand beater or just use a fork, it'll take you a while. But if you keep using the fork on the whipping cream, you can get it to be whipped cream. You have to just keep going like that. So they did that, and they made their whipped cream, and they put it on the top, and they actually liked it. We did not use any electricity. It was all in the rules, because because it was holiday. It was Shavuot, and so there's no cooking. Well, you usually can cook on a holiday for that holiday, but I don't know. This was the night before. He just told me you cannot use any electric stuff. So we made our own whipped cream. We made our own little desserts. And they were so happy. They were working, they were cutting their strawberries, and they were whipping up the cream, and they were putting it in, and they had fun. They worked in groups. I think they gave the whipping to the men to beat up the cream. So it worked. We did that 2 years. This year, thank goodness, he's having other workshops. But to find the cookies that were, appropriate, sandwich cookies that were parov, and then I had to get the whipping cream. So I got the farmer cheese. I use the farmer cheese, and strawberries, and and I used I don't know if I had a chocolate syrup, and I used the cookies, and then we put the whipped cream, and it turned out pretty good. So that was my effort at, he said, can you make he said to me, can you make a cheesecake without baking? I go, you crazy? You can't. I said, I can't do that. So, Nancy?
Yeah, I had a question. Is Ruth the original convert, and are there other converts mentioned in the Torah?
A good question. I don't know that, but she is the one that is like the
Right.
most praiseworthy. She is the one because she was warned. Well, you're thinking of all of the patriarchs and their wives. Well, okay. So Jacob, Joseph married an Egyptian woman.
What about Zipporah?
Oh,
And
right.
Zipporah was
Right.
she was Moabite, right?
Right.
When
But
he
did
went
they
to
convert?
Moab.
Did they convert?
It doesn't say anything about
Yeah,
Zipporah.
that's what I'm saying. I don't
There's
remember that.
nothing in the text about him converting her. That Zipporah, she's a Moabite woman too. It does not say anything. That just he married her and they had children. But there is some allusion to it because they stop at a wayside hotel en route back to Egypt, because Moses and Aaron are going to go and approach the Pharaoh. And she circumcises Gershom, firstborn. Ger, it means a stranger, and his name means Gershom. He would be a stranger there because his mother is not Jewish, but she does the circumcision. She
Must be
takes
the
a
father.
flint. It says in the text, she takes a flint and she circumcises her firstborn. So but she is not. There's nothing about her converting. And that's a very good question, but there's nothing about her and there's nothing. So I think, so Joseph's wife was it Elisheva? She was the daughter also of a priest, an Egyptian priest. Likewise with Zipporah. But there's nothing in the Torah, nothing in Genesis, and Exodus about those two women.
Was Joseph married? Well, he had to be because he had all those sons. So is Elisheva like his second wife in Egypt? He went down to Egypt and remarried,
No, Jacob was the one that had all the
Oh,
children.
it's Jacob, sorry.
Joseph is Ephraim and Manasseh.
Right, sorry. Okay.
And it doesn't say anything. She is a daughter of a priest. It does not say anything about her converting either. And it's a very good question.
Okay.
That's what happens, It yeah. So there is the book of Ruth. And I didn't want to give you, the chapters that didn't have any, just she's going to the field and she's working. And so we wanted to just talk a little bit. A couple of people were interested in meeting in the summer. Should we keep the same time?
Mhm.
Because you know what, the link I will ask if the link can be kept live, because I don't think they have any classes in the summer unless classes want to meet, which I've done before, meet in the summer. And what happened at the end of the summer, we started to get ready and I taught for the high holidays, and that was interesting. I taught a lot of the melodies and the prayers for the holidays, and that was very interesting. So I wanted to ask Dorothy, when you were in Israel, did you
Yeah.
talk to people about the protests?
The process had just started when we were there, but nothing was shut down. It shut down the day after we left. But we didn't hear too much about it when we were there.
Because hundreds of thousands of people are in the streets. Now, There's something on Shavuot called the Dance of the Flags. So I have to look that up and see what it is, but I guess everybody in Israel must have a full-size Israeli flag.
Yeah, they walked around when we were there. I mean, you knew that there were protests. We didn't actively see one, but the people walked around with the flags. You have to be careful because otherwise you get stabbed, when you
So
walk.
the article that I'm writing for my region, which I have to give in for Thursday, they'll print it Thursday morning, because Shavuos is Thursday night. I'm calling it Yin Yang Israeli style, because here's a study in contrasts. Here you have the nation under attack, and yet they're protesting. And then I read that the men who were reservists were refusing to go for training because of this whole situation with the Supreme Court and Netanyahu's refusal to stop or even delay. So he actually had a broadcast. He had made a video, and on Yom Ha'atzmaut, he showed up, but he didn't speak in person. He had this on a screen. He had this pre-recorded. I guess he didn't want people to throw tomatoes at him or whatever, but he want to get up in front of
Or
everyone.
shoot, whatever.
Yeah, right.
No,
So
they asked him not to. The generals asked him to please not show up in person, I think. The
but I
generals
think I
do.
saw him there. I think I saw him at some of the festivities, because there's a lot of times in those couple of days, the night before,
Right, right.
Memorial Day, Yom HaZikaron, and then the next day, Yom HaAtzmaut. So again, I guess Israel can do that. The night before, the day before, they're going to the cemeteries and they're mourning all those who died in all the wars. That night is a fireworks and the barbecues and going to the beaches and all that starts the next day, Yom HaAtzmaut. And so it's really the same thing I feel is happening here. Thursday, if you watch TV, and we watch the Israeli channel, you see these people out in the streets dancing. And with their flags, and they're parading around and they're dancing. Meanwhile, they were just under attack from Gaza by Islamic Jihad. And they were just protesting with hundreds of thousands of people in the streets. So you would think that would be a time for unity, but no. Very interesting, right? Only in Israel, So I'm calling it the yin yang of Israeli style. So I have to finish my article today. So we have a couple of minutes. Is there any prayer? I know what you're going to say that you wanted to go over in particular. Yes, Nancy.
Actually, I had sent you this as an email. Our beloved cantor of 40 years passed away last night from stage 4 metastatic pancreatic cancer. It's just been a nightmare. I mean, my screen is popping up with all kinds of stuff. So the funeral is Sunday, and I looked up in Blue Greenberg's book, her How to Run a Jewish Household. So
this was a female or a male?
Male, 40 years. Yeah, he was 69 years old. So it's awful, just
awful.
tragic. Isn't there something, because we're going to go to services tonight, isn't there a ritual or a minhag or something where the family that's mourning comes to services and they wait outside and then they come into the service? Yeah. Does someone know about that? And would that happen tonight, or would it happen tomorrow on Saturday morning?
I've never heard of that.
But we used to do it in West Hartford, and it
Okay.
was Saturday morning
Okay.
that they would come in.
I remember it was Friday night. I'm actually
I
gonna.
don't, actually, you might be right. I'm not
I
sure.
don't know. Okay. Nobody. Okay. I'll find out. 'Cause, I mean, it doesn't matter. We're gonna go anyway tonight. But so my question to you, Carol, and to everyone actually, is, I mean, we've learned the Kaddish, but maybe some of these other, like there's a saying that I looked up, and the 3 words that you're supposed to say when you first hear that someone.
Baruch Dayan Emet.
Emet. Yeah. So I don't know if
That
there are
means
other.
blessed is the holy judge.
Right.
Baruch Dayan Emet. That's, the rabbi will probably say that. That's what you're supposed to say.
Okay.
You know. And I've looked up, in the morning customs too. And of course, they're supposed to sit on stools, sit
Right.
on stools, and not cook and cover the mirrors and all of that in the house of mourning. They're also not supposed to greet you, with hugs and
Right.
kisses, but everybody does, but they're supposed to be somber and not effusive like that.
Right. I'm
People,
talking more about the Hebrew, the stuff like that will say
Yeah.
at the Sheva. I'm not Sheva, I'm in the wrong thing here.
Yeah, no. I know what you're saying, because when my husband's Orthodox cousin came and I popped up out of the stool, he said, no, you sit,
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't touch it because I knew that was a no, but
yeah,
just,
definitely.
and when they
But I
left,
mean,
they
okay.
left, they said like a prayer, and I
Right.
don't, like a one-liner. It wasn't a big
Right.
one-liner.
Well, there's
That's
that
what they
special
say.
line you say at the grave site when the family is walking by. It's one sentence. I don't know. I just wonder if there's certain specific things that are said at the
Yeah, well,
the
that I know
minyan.
is when you hear of a death,
Right.
and they say Baruch Dayan Emet is blessed is the holy judge, so don't blame it
There's
on
something
God.
like, may you be comforted among the mourners. of Zion.
Right. Of
I
Zion.
don't
Right.
remember the Hebrew, but
I don't either. So that's something I would, like to study and learn. And
Yeah.
I don't know
Sure.
if there are other things at the minyan, specific psalms or things that are always said.
Okay,
So-
when they had the minyan, they do the, service, and then, of course, several times they do repeat the morning's Kaddish.
Right.
And usually they have a psalm of the day, whatever the day is, and they'll recite that. And of course, they won't cook, in the house. So usually the sisterhood will send a meal, like in our sisterhood, they send a meal to the house. They send a Shabbat meal.
Right.
So since, I don't know if they've already done that, but that would have been appropriate for today.
Right. That's all
and-
been done. We've had a meal train for weeks. And luckily my husband and I were able to bring a turkey dinner because we keep kosher. And I just thought that would be a good thing. I mean, there's 3 adult children as well.
No, what's
So
meal
that-
train? What's meal train?
Oh, it's when you sign up to bring a meal to somebody who needs it. I mean, it's not a Jewish thing. It's just a sign up thing.
Yeah, we have it at our synagogue too.
Right. Yeah.
Is
So
that-
we had signed up and anyway,
Have the people who are Jewish and non-Jewish?
yeah, meal train is not Jewish.
Oh, we don't do that. We do it just from the synagogue, like.
Oh,
when-
no. So when you have, I've provided meals for other people who aren't Jewish
Mhm.
through meal train.
That's
Oh.
really nice.
We just have it.
Yeah,
Remember,
we usually, the sisterhood usually sends a Shabbat dinner, and they ask the family, are there any allergies and anything that
Right.
you don't like, because you don't want to send something that, let's say fish, I can't eat it or whatever.
Right.
when my father-in-law died, the sisterhood would not only send a meal, they would stay with my mother-in-law while she ate it. to
Wow,
be
that's
sure
really
she
nice.
ate.
Because she was by herself.
She was by herself.
that's very compassionate.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
was-
I think I have a book on mourning. So I'll look these things up. Yenachem, something, Yenachem is you may be comforted. What was the one what is it in English? May be comforted.
May be covered among the mourners of Zion, something like that.
Avelim, I think, is mourners, B'Tzion, but it's something like that. Yenachem, Avelim Tzion. I'll look it up because I have a book with the customs.
May God comfort you among all the mourners of Zion in Jerusalem.
Yeah. Yenachem etchem, something like that. I will look that up. I don't think that's in the regular prayer book, but it is, there's a special pamphlet about, laws of mourning and all. So I'm sorry to hear that. So So what are they going to do?
Well, the funeral, which will be a mob scene, is
Yeah.
Sunday at 1:30. So it will also be live streamed. Because, I mean, the man, he was there for 40 years. He taught thousands. I mean, he touched thousands of lives every B'nai Mitzvah. I mean, he did
So he was well loved in the
oh,
congregation.
absolutely.
Yeah,
The whole family. Yeah, it's
right.
awful.
So it's a real tragedy. So you're gonna have to have a search committee and get started with all of that.
Right. At the same time as a search committee for an assistant rabbi, but that's a whole nother story. Our synagogue's kind of falling apart right now.
An assistant rabbi?
Yeah. Anyway, I don't mean to keep people longer and
No,
end on
no.
such a
No,
negative
but
note.
I will look up, and if there's anything that I find, I'll send it to you, Nancy. I'm sorry, very sorry to hear that because
Yeah.
we were at a bat mitzvah last week
Oh,
and
right.
it was a reform congregation, but the whole Musaf was sung. A lot of everything was she was a young woman and with a very nice voice, and everything was sung. It was not chanted, it was sung. And there were very nice melodies, like when they ask if anyone who has a name that they'd like to say, the Debbie Friedman me.
Right.
And then there's a part that goes in English, but that's in the book. It was very nice. And I don't know, do any of you, I was wondering, when we do the Torah reading, we are not triennial. That synagogue was triennial. We do the whole reading. And
Oh, wow. No wonder you're doing it so often.
last week was a double parsha,
Oh, my.
Bahar and Behukotecha. And so the rabbi was visiting his mother in Chicago. The cantor was there. So a lot of people had to step up. So they didn't have the honors gabbai. So at the last minute, I said, okay, I wrote to the rabbi, I'll do honors gabbai. And that's the second time I've done it. Now, I didn't know that a husband and wife cannot have an aliyah back to back. Did you know that? They weren't ladies. Just, I guess it's something superstitious. They can't have aliyahs back to back. So I gave the woman
We can
4
have it.
and I gave the guy 6. So there was a space in between for someone else. I gave the 5th aliyah, but I didn't know that. And if there's no Kohen, so the Levi can take Bimkom in the place of the Kohen. The Levi can take the Kohen aliyah, but then for the Levi one, for the second one, I think they said the Levi can't have 2 aliyahs.
Right, nobody can have 2 aliyahs at the same service.
So I made a boo-boo on that. I didn't know that. So I gave the Levi, he did Kohen, and then he had to sit down, and then they got somebody else to do the Levi aliyah. You live and learn.
Yep.
It's the first time.
Don't you let the husband and wife have an aliyah together?
Sure. We
You
do.
can do that.
We
We don't.
We do.
You
We
do.
don't like to have that too much. We do, like, if it's an anniversary or something like that, they'll do it if it's a special thing, but we don't do it just for a regular aliyah. But if it's a special occasion, they do allow it.
We do it for B'nai Mitzvahs.
Yeah, though that's an occasion.
Right.
Yeah.
A
Carol,
special
Carol,
occasion.
I have a question. Our
Ah.
40th anniversary is Yom Kippur Day.
Right.
Is it appropriate for us to have an aliyah to celebrate our 40th anniversary on Yom Kippur?
why not?
Well, it's a solemn day. You might want to have it the week before. I don't know if there's any rule against it. You might just say, we'd like to have an aliyah. And you can tell the rabbi what it is. And if he goes, oh, no, that'll be your answer.
Right.
But I would
Okay.
discuss it with him in advance. He may suggest the week before. Because I don't recall anyone singing Simon Tov and Mazel Tov and Mazel
Right.
Tov on Yom Kippur, but if you do it the week before or the week after, then they can sing to you because it is supposed to be a solemn day. So I think he would, if I were the rabbi, I would probably suggest do it the week before or the week after. Because I don't, this kind of a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yom Kippur. You want to discuss it with them in advance.
Good.
Dorothy?
Yeah, I found it very interesting because my bat mitzvah celebration with a group of women was on Shavuot. And I had to, the synagogue said, oh, no, it's Yom Tov, we can't do it. I said, yeah, we are doing it because the Saturday was my youngest child's bar mitzvah. And I said, he has his bar mitzvah and then we'll do the thing on Sunday. And it was the first day of Shavuot. So it was very nice. It was very nice. And I didn't realize the significance of it till you talked about Ruth.
Well, yeah, but the, like I said, it's in some synagogues, that's the time when they have the class, the bat mitzvah class,
Yeah, and
on
I
Shavuot.
get it.
the giving
so-
of the Torah, and you're becoming bat mitzvah, accepting the laws and all. It's very appropriate. And they're doing it also at Women's League in a convention. Nancy?
When I had my Benot mitzvah, also, it was a group of women. We scared away the one man. I mean, this is a very, very long time ago in the 90s, which is why I'm still learning Hebrew. We had it right after Passover, I think, because we do the blessing of the babies, all the babies that have been born in the year. They do a thing with the Talid, and all the parents come and bring their, 1 or less year old babies with them.
I
So I
think
don't know
that
what
is
the
specific
significance-
to your congregation. I think,
Remember, I'm
think
on the West Coast.
That's not a rule. That's not something that, I've ever heard of. But I mean, it's, every congregation can do. They take like
Right.
all the young people, all the children, and they hold the towers up, and the children come up who are present. And they take, the heads of those who are past presidents of the synagogue, and the president of the, the sisterhood and all that. But that's something that's unique to you. So, all right.
Okay.
So
Okay.
next week we don't meet. Have a wonderful Chag Sameach.